Welcome to Sustainability Now, an exploration of technologies and paradigms to shape a world that works. Designed for socially conscious entrepreneurs and individuals interested in responsible stewardship of the planet. Sustainability Now covers food, energy, housing, water, waste, health, economics, and consciousness. Welcome to your community, Sustainability Now, with your host, Mira Rubin.
Welcome, everybody, to Sustainability Now, Technologies and Paradigms to Shape a World That Works. Today's guest is Paul Maughan-Brown, Content Manager for the Cork recycling program called ReCORK and its parent company, Canadian orthopedic footwear brand Soul. ReCORK is North America's largest natural wine cork recycling program, was launched in 2008 by Canadian footwear company Soul. ReCORK is an alliance of businesses and individuals who work together to collect and repurpose natural wine corks. The corks are used to innovate and create natural, sustainable alternatives to petroleum-based foams and plastics. To date, ReCORK has collected more than 110 million corks for recycling and has planted over 8,000 cork trees. And they're just getting started. Paul, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here with us.
Thanks so much. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us about cork, because I think that so many people have the misconception that cork is not particularly a sustainable material.
Sure. So from the very sort of basics, cork is it grows on trees, quite literally. It's harvested from the bark of the cork oak tree, which is a type of oak tree. And it grows mainly in Mediterranean Europe. Portugal is the real heartland of cork. And yeah, people have this misconception that it's endangered or threatened, or you shouldn't buy cork products because it poses a threat to cork itself, but it's just a total misconception. We're not sure entirely where it came from, but it grows as the bark of the cork oak tree. In the cork oak tree has this thick outer layer of bark, which is relatively unique. And it's harvested once every 10 to 12 years, or 9 to 12 years, about a decade. And the way they do it is they go in by hand, they drive into the cork oak forests, which are known as the Montado in Portugal. And they have these specialized cork harvesting axes, and they chop into just the outer layer of the cork oak tree's bark, and peel away the bark from the trunks of the tree in these big strips of bark, and then collect the bark. And then from there it goes through relatively little processing comparatively to turn it into a wine cork, which is obviously the thing that we're all most familiar with in terms of its applications. But it's dried out, and then I believe they boil it to get rid of any impurities or bacteria or whatever it might be. And then they take the sheets of bark, and they basically, in the highest quality wine corks, they literally punch straight out of that sheet of bark cylinders of cork, which then go into the top of your wine bottle, and shipped around the world to wine drinkers around the world. And yeah, so it's this fantastic natural material, and it's incredibly sustainable in that harvesting the cork off the tree doesn't harm the tree. The trees are never cut down. In fact, in Portugal, it's illegal to cut down a cork tree without written permission. It's the national tree of Portugal. And once the tree has been harvested, it then goes about regrowing this outer layer of protective bark. And when it starts to regrow the bark, it actually boosts the tree's carbon consumption as it photosynthesizes to regrow the bark, which has been harvested. And you'll see, I don't know if you've ever seen photos from a cork harvest. It's sort of this kind of romantic, beautiful process that happens. But what they do is they actually paint a number on the bark of the tree to show the year. So this year's harvest would have got a 1, or maybe a 2-1, or maybe just a 1. But then they know that it was in 2021 that the trees were harvested, and then as they come back through the forests in subsequent years, they can see, okay, that tree we need to think about checking for harvesting in 10 years time. So 2031, because it's got a 1 on it, then we'll go to that tree and assess it and see if it's ready to be harvested or not. Yeah, so it's this fantastically sustainable, natural, precious material.
So I think it's so fascinating. So many questions. First off, you guys are just working with recycled cork. Is there a lot? How much recycled cork is there in the world?
Not a lot. Well, it depends on where you are and what you consider to be recycled cork. So we are the largest post-consumer recycled cork or cork recycling operation in North America. It's not a thing which happens extensively around the world. In Portugal, they do have a certain amount of recycling of actual wine corks, but there's a lot of sort of household items or industrial materials that are made out of cork are considered to be recycled cork, in that they are post-industrial recycled. So they come from cork which is left over from the wine cork industry and put through a cycle of becoming something else. So for instance, a cork coaster or a cork pinboard or whatever it might be, a lot of that is recycled in that it's already gone through an industrial cycle in producing the wine corks. But the leftover from that cycle, so if you picture the negative of the wine cork that's been punched out of the bark, whatever's left over, that's then ground up and turned into another. And so that's one of the fascinating things about it, is that it's utilized. There's almost zero waste in cork production. So they grind down anything that's left over and turn it into a coaster or a pinboard or insulation on buildings or whatever it might be.
So
and then
can those materials then be included in your cork recycling, or is the ReCORK recycling specifically wine corks?
We deal specifically with natural wine corks. And the reason for that is logistical. It's shipping and processing of the corks themselves, but it's also quality. We know that with the wine cork, what you're getting is either purely natural cork, or you're getting a cork, because a lot of wine corks will be actually made out of themselves an agglomerated, ground down cork. But we know that material we can recycle into our batch. But the thing about grinding down, working with the material that's coming in from, as is the issue with recycling so broadly, is the quality of the material that you're getting in can vary really quite greatly. So if we are accepting things that we don't know what the source is, we don't know what the original material was, we don't know what it's been stuck together with to keep it together. It runs the risk of undermining or contaminating a whole recycling batch. So we work only with natural wine corks for now.
So do you have any idea the volume of natural wine corks that might have been going to landfill that are now are available or potentially recyclable? Any idea?
It's difficult. It's very difficult to put a number to it.
I would imagine.
We've, as you said, we've recycled 110 million corks since we started in 2008, and that's as a relatively unknown entity. Not, ReCORK isn't exactly a household name,
right?
So if we were 10 times more well known over the years, we could be talking in the billions of,
Big
thousands of millions, hundreds of millions.
A lot.
a lot. I couldn't tell you exactly what the potential is, but I can tell you definitely that it's an amount that has the potential to cause a meaningful impact in the amount of. It's really not just about the amount of cork itself that we can recycle, as much as it is about the amount of petroleum-based foams and plastics, petroleum-based materials that we can offset, that we can replace by using those corks.
Which is a really good segue. So interestingly enough, ReCORK was started by Sol, and Sol is an orthopedic footwear company, which is, such an unlikely pairing if you were to imagine it. So can you tell us how that came about?
Sure. So it's similarly sort of a story of necessity, of filling necessity, of our CEO and founder Mike seeing a need for something within a market. So Sol itself started when Mike had this. His name's Mike Baker. He had this back injury in the early 2000s, and he found that orthopedic inserts in his shoes really helped him, but they were prohibitively expensive and rigid, and he couldn't go running in them, basically, is what it came down to. And he had this thought, like, why does something not exist that is affordable and customizable and does the same job? It can't be that hard. And he went about the process of filling this need that he identified, that people should have access to this particular product. And so Sol was born. And throughout the early years of running Sol, he, I guess, was in the grand scheme of things a relatively early adopter. Well, not adopter. He had an awareness from a relatively early stage that doing business in a way that didn't account for the planet and didn't account for our impacts on the planet and didn't work to mitigate our impacts and have a positive impact just wasn't going to cut it in the long term. That we needed to change, and that there was a need for a better way to do things. And so he always had this feeling that there should be a more sustainable way to make footwear components in general, specifically the insoles that are the sort of bread and butter of our company. So it came about, really, he knew that he had this need, but he couldn't quite figure out what the answer was. And then one day he was at a lake house of a friend, and this lake house had this 60-year-old cork floor. The floor was made out of these cork. This cork has numerous applications. Throughout thousands of years, people have used it for all sorts of different things, but construction is one of them. And he was particularly impressed by these cork floor tiles, and the way they felt and the way they looked and how well they'd held up over 60 years of people walking on them. And it was a bit of a light bulb moment. And so from that point, he went and did his research into cork and discovered exactly how sustainable it is as a material in the way that it's harvested and grown. And one thing led to the next.
Beautiful. That's so exciting. I love when there's such serendipity, you know, where we have a moment where we connect two ideas that have no previous relationship at all. So that's brilliant. And
for sure.
Yeah, so tell us what kinds of products Soul makes that are particularly sustainable. You said that the intention was to utilize cork to replace some petroleum-based products, foams and such. So yeah, give us a little bit of an education on insoles and shoes and things.
Sure. So I'll show you our recycled cork insoles, which firstly, I'm sure you'll be very happy to know comes in entirely plastic-free packaging. We've recently done an overhaul of all our packaging to remove all plastic components, which we're really proud of. We even ship them out in paper mailers. So that's fantastic, but I'll keep my eyes on the prize and go straight to the product. I won't tell you too much about the packaging, that is. So this is a sole footbed. This one is wide. It's specifically designed for a wider shaped shoe, but in essence, the sole footbed gives a custom moldable, supportive insole. This right here, this is a thermal dot that goes black when the footbed has reached the right temperature for heat molding it. All of our footbeds are custom moldable. So you get this, you put it straight in your oven, you heat it up for 2 minutes at 200 degrees Fahrenheit, you put it in your shoes, you put your shoes on, and you get a custom molded support that works fantastically for your unique feet. Everybody's feet are different.
Wow.
And so the idea is that, you know, as I said, Mike had found the support so helpful. But if you go to get prescription orthotics made, it can cost you around $500.
Exactly. I know that. I went to get my foot measured or whatever to be able to get custom insoles, and it was $500.
$500.
I end up getting them, so I'm excited about these for sure.
So this is a $60, I believe, insole
versus 500.
Yeah, exactly. So it really is a fantastic find. A lot of people, you know, we have testimonials and reviews from people. It's one of my favorite parts of doing my job is reading the reviews coming in of people saying, you guys have changed my life. You know, I had this debilitating foot pain. It cost me hundreds of dollars. I couldn't find something that worked for me. I couldn't find comfort, and I tried your product. And hey presto, I'm back to living life the way I want to live life.
That's amazing. I do have challenges with my feet, I have to say. So this is exciting for me. You ship to the US?
Yeah, we have so we're based in, I'm in Vancouver. Our Canadian headquarters is in Calgary, but we do have a warehouse that we ship out of in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
So yeah, we ship all around.
And I shouldn't let the cat out of the bag so early, but I believe you offered a discount program for Sustainability Now viewers and listeners.
For sure. So any listeners can go to yoursole.com/sustainability-now. So yoursole.com/sustainability-now. And there you can find 20% off any recycled cork product.
Yes, that's awesome. So, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, so what we did really was with this product, we took our wine corks, and you can see this is made out of a ground down cork material. So we take corks, we receive them. We can talk a little bit about how the program actually works in a bit, but we take the corks, grind them down, and re-agglomerate them in a mold. And what's special about these footbeds as well is that they are density mapped. So that means that certain areas of the footbed are more dense than others. Because the thing about your foot is that really what we want to do is to support the foot anatomically, but without controlling its movement biomechanically. So you want your foot to be able to flex. You want this to be able to flex with your foot's movement, but further back in the arch, you want it to be a bit more sturdy to give your foot that support that it needs. And you want this nice deep heel cup to maintain its structural integrity, because what that does is it cradles the natural fat of your heel under your heel bone to make the most of your natural shock absorption as you walk. And so, I mean, that's all a whole lot of technical foot stuff, but the awesome thing is that the whole of the base of this product is made out of recycled wine corks, as I've said. And then on top of that, we have a open cell foam cushioning and a synthetic top sheet. But coming down the line, we're looking at with our new ReCORK recycled cork formula, we are going to be able to make different firmness and cushioning attributes for different layers of the footbed. So what we're looking at coming down the line is essentially a product just like this, but the whole thing is recycled cork. There's nothing but recycled cork.
So really what's happening is you're kind of making a stepped process into something that is fully sustainable or recyclable, or from recyclables.
Exactly. And recyclable. In the instance of the footbeds, those will be entirely recyclable. So, but let me go through sort of the because there's a bit of a chronological story to the material itself. So those footbeds we've been making for a number of years, and they work fantastically. They have a lot of diehard fans. I wear them in my running shoes. In fact, I wear them in my hike. I wear them in basically everything. But that cork material, one of the few drawbacks about cork is that it has a certain brittleness. We've managed to, with our older formulations, get a certain amount of flexibility, but it's not as durable as you might hope in all instances. And it's, as I say, one of the inherent qualities of cork as a material, or especially recycled cork, is that it does have, if I were to bend this coaster, for instance, beyond a certain point, it's going to crack in half. And so what we've been working on for a number of years now, with a dedicated research and development team based in Portugal, in the home of cork, is an entirely new way of combining ground down wine corks and ground down cork to create a new material which is completely flexible and cushioning and lightweight, and can more practically replace a wider variety of foams and plastics for a far wider set of applications. And the result of that is our all new ReCORK recycled cork, which you can see in the midsole of our Jasper Chukka, which is available on pre-order now. But the thing is, I mean, we can talk more about the shoe, but the impressive thing really is that this material is almost indestructible.
Does cork act as a good insulator?
Fantastic insulator. I'm glad you asked. Yes, I believe it was used. In fact, I know it's used in space shuttles. I believe I read that in the module of a space shuttle returning to Earth through the Earth's atmosphere, they needed something that was sufficiently lightweight, but also could insulate against the extreme heat of re-entering Earth's atmosphere, and cork was one of the materials or the material that they chose to use.
Does it wick?
Yes.
So it's a good thing for sweaty feet, to keep them hot, warm, and to keep them cool and less sweaty.
Exactly.
I imagine. Interesting. So you said that you're moving towards a 100% sustainable and recyclable material and shoe too, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is that you're creating this material to replace foams. It occurs to me that foam is used in so many different marketplaces. And cork, I asked you earlier, like, what kind of volume is there of wine corks? It occurs to me that it is not unlikely that once this really takes off, that demand could outstrip supply of recycled corks. And I'm wondering if you guys have thought about that at all, and where to go with that.
Yeah, for sure. We have thought about it. I'd say two things. Firstly, our primary focus is get to that point. We got to walk before we can run. I don't think we are too concerned yet about running out of cork, especially since we are recycling a large volume of cork that is being used for other applications. But planting cork trees, basically, there's only one solution, and that's plant as many cork trees as you can plant. And in order to do that, you have to have you obviously have to have a plan in place, and you have to have land in which to do it, and you have to have. But it's a long-term investment. It's a relatively long-term investment. The planting of the cork oak trees themselves. The
recycled cork that you're collecting, I think we can maybe jump back to ReCORK now.
Sure.
You've set up a system where there are cork collection facilities all over the world, or is it mostly North America?
It's North America for now. Well, they're not facilities as such. They're more anybody can sign up to be a ReCORK.
Individuals even.
Individuals, businesses, anybody can recycle their corks. The one caveat is that we request that people ship their corks in a minimum of 15 pounds, which is quite a lot of cork.
Yeah.
So it's difficult for an individual to collect that amount of cork themselves. But bars, restaurants, grocery stores. So we have three sort of main partnership models, those being public cork collection points, private, and events. And so a public partner can or will accept corks from the public, the hint's in the name. So anybody, if you say sign up your grocery store, or it could be your office within an office block, or even a municipal depot. We've had some municipalities signing up. You accept corks from the public, collect them all together once you have a minimum of 15 pounds, and then ship them over to us. Private collection partners collect their corks in the back end of the business that they run, like bars and restaurants, relatively obviously. And then event partners, similarly so, if you have a festival or a wine event or whatever it may be, similarly collect your corks. And we work with all of our partners to provide marketing materials, and event partners in particular, to give them whatever support we can in the process.
Really, it's more like supporting them with the marketing materials. It's kind of a philanthropic engagement in a way from the end of the partners, right? They're collecting the corks, and then they package and ship them back to you at their expense, right?
Correct.
But you do on your website, you have a map of all these different locations. And how does somebody that is interested in participating in this effort get involved?
Get involved being the key words. You go to recork.com/get-involved, and you find everything you want there. But so anybody can sign up. If you sign up to be a public collection partner, you get your location put on our partners map, where people can go and search for a ReCORK location near me, to bring in their corks to you. And yeah, it's philanthropic. It's relying on the goodwill and the not just the goodwill, but the sense of responsibility of our partners too. It's relying on the sense. One thing that we think is relatively common across almost anybody who's ever opened uncorks a bottle of wine is that wine cork that you get out of a bottle of wine has a real sense of being a special material. It's not like a screw cap. There's something really quite special about that, and so we support that sense. We say you're dead right. It is really special. It's the super versatile, super useful material that's too good to end up in landfills. And more people have more of an awareness and more of a sense of doing the right thing, in terms of minimizing their own environmental impacts, and we provide a way in which to do that.
One cork at a time, or 15 pounds of corks at a time.
Exactly, which is one cork at a time. Yeah.
So I am curious, because you're developing this technology to replace all kinds of foams. If your materials are going to be, if you make your materials available to other kinds of companies, or there's an expectation going forward in the future that you will expand into other arenas beyond sole itself, it may be other footwear companies, but maybe even beyond that. So do you guys have any plans you can share about that, or a big vision?
Definitely. We definitely have plans. We have exciting collaborations in the pipeline. Not that I can share anything about in particular, not the specifics at the moment, unfortunately. But we do have exciting collaborations coming up. We are, footwear it's what we know best. So it's the easiest. It's the point of collaboration that makes the most sense for us to begin with. Because we have expertise, we know how to make footwear, we know how to make footwear components, we know how to provide people with what they need in order to reduce the impact of their products. So yes, we are looking at, to begin with, collaborations within the footwear industry, but beyond that in the future, there's no limit really, as we've said, and that's one of the things that is so special about the materials, that we have control over the particular characteristics of the ReCORK recycled cork that we provide. So we can adjust and tweak how cushioning it is, how flexible it is, how hard it is, how light it is, and so that's why we can take, for instance, in that footbed, we can make the different layers of the same product out of the same material, but one layer will have different attributes to another layer. And I know that's something that would be of interest, is that we then, with that footbed, the idea in the long run is to then be able to take that footbed back from you, put it back into the system, and recycle it, and so add it back into the feedstock for the next batch of recycled cork products. And we're looking at that for the footbeds, at least, because the footbed will be a completely cork product. It will have nothing but cork in its construction. That shouldn't be too far away. We're not too far away from being able to do that, which we're really excited by, because we've always championed a circular economy and the idea of circularity, the idea of bioproducts, and put whatever parts of that product back into the supply chain that you can. But in order for us personally to become truly circular in what we do, that recycling of the product at the end of its life is a key component. So we're really looking forward.
Right now, the binder that you're using, it's a petroleum-based binder or fossil fuel-based, and then you're migrating into a binder that'll be biodegradable, or?
In the current iteration, yes, it is petroleum-based, but we are moving to a binder which I believe is this material is made up of at least 75% cork itself, which is something really worth stating. That, you know, more and more people are catching on to the idea of cork as a really sustainable material. But you'll see sometimes, I've seen it in certain footwear features or brands or special editions of shoes that bigger brands come out with, and they speak to the cork in say an outsole or a midsole, and they'll only be using a tiny proportion of actual cork.
Right.
Whereas
this is so that they can say it's an ingredient. Right?
Exactly. You know, and great. You know, fantastic. Rather have that small, you know, any percentage of the petroleum reduced is a percentage in the right direction. But, you know, this really is this is 75% made out of corks, and then, or at least 75%, depending on how the specific characteristics of the ReCORK recycled cork that you might want if we were collaborating. But yes, the binder in this is petroleum based, but we are moving toward a binder which I believe is 85% bio based. I think we're there, and the goal is to get to a 100% bio based binder. So I mean, great. That's definitely high on our list of priorities, is to get the binder to being bio based. But even with the binder that isn't bio based, we can still recycle that same product into our feedstock.
That's good.
So,
great.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting. I guess I want to look at, is it chicken or egg, for Seoul developing ReCORK? Was it because Seoul needed a source of cork initially, and then thought, you know, this is something that we can expand? And what was the motivation to start ReCORK?
I think just recognition of the facts, looking around and seeing. I think it was sort of chicken and egg. You know, we need the cork, and the cork is there, and people are throwing away this material. So it seemed like a no-brainer in a way. For the household. Sorry,
I should ask the question more specifically. Did you start out with the cork insoles by buying cork?
It's a good question. No, I'm going to say we started out by recycling cork, identifying cork as you know, there was a certain amount of precedence for what can be done with recycled cork. Okay. So I think it was recycled cork is going to be something that we can use. This is going to be viable. How are we going to do it? We're going to set up a supply chain for doing that, and in order to do that, we're going to launch a recycling program. It was before my time in the company. It's a good question. I haven't been asked that before.
It's a brilliant business strategy. You know, is to identify a material that, could have a cost associated with it. And rather than expending the cost, creating a way to have that material sent to the business while helping the planet, like while solving a social issue. I just think it's brilliant, very much out of the box thinking. And it's like, oh, well, how do I get this resource that we need to make this product because it's going to be a superior product? Oh, why don't we get people to give it to us? I was like, that's brilliant. Really brilliant. And the people that are giving it are feeling like they're doing something positive, which they are.
Yeah.
So it's just brilliant.
Yeah, thanks. We think so too.
So let me ask you, is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you might want to share about about ReCORK or about Soul or circular design, even like how you have an R&D department?
Yeah, in Portugal. So we're looking very much at designing for disassembly. So for instance, this shoe, which I've showed, this shoe was planned from top to bottom to be made out of completely natural materials, or natural and sustainable and recycled in whichever components they can be. So recycled PET laces, merino wool. It's insulated with a recycled bison or an upcycled bison fur insulation, which is a material made by a brand called United by Blue, who we collaborated with on this shoe. They found a way of creating a supply chain to utilize this bison fur that was being, sent to landfills, similarly to the wine corks. And inside the insole or footbed that's inside this shoe is going to be made out of a bio-based EVA. So it's made from sugarcane, from
wow,
materials derived from sugarcane, and a natural rubber outsole. And so this whole shoe has been sort of carefully thought about from top to bottom in terms of how do we make this. We had developed the ReCORK recycled cork midsole, and so from there we thought, well, let's not just stop there. Let's look at a whole shoe from top to bottom, from tongue to tread, as we say, and think about how can we make it as sustainable as possible. But moving forward, as you say, we are looking carefully at designing for disassembly. So designing footwear products in a way that we can take them apart. So for instance, we also do, as a company, make flip-flops, orthopedic flip-flops, supportive flip-flops. And so you would be looking at something like this, but the whole of this section would be made out of cork, and the strap would be made out of something biodegradable, whether that be a merino wool knit or something equivalent.
You're not there yet.
We're not far away.
Okay.
We're not far away. And so the whole idea is partly because so much has shifted to online commerce in the last couple of years, especially. I mean, before the pandemic as well, but especially since the pandemic, there's been such a boom in online commerce. The idea is you would go onto our website, order a footbed that was made out of recycled cork and was completely recyclable, and it would come shipped to you in a box, and the footbeds that you had in your shoes already from the last time you ordered footbeds, which are made out of recycled cork and are themselves recyclable, you would take the new ones out the box, put the old ones back in the box, send them straight back to us in one smooth move. Those come back to us and go straight back into the manufacturing process. So the flip-flops, likewise, same thing. I'm not entirely sure how and when disassembly works. I'm not on I'm not in the design process myself, but I would imagine similarly, you send us back the flip-flops, they get disassembled in whatever way works best.
So in your conversation about the circularity of it, taking your old footbeds, putting them, how long does the footbed last?
It depends on the wearer. It depends on how sensitive your feet are to the support. So we have some people who might replace their footbeds once every 6 months to a year. I've been wearing the same pair of recycled cork footbeds in my running shoes for the last 2 years, I would say, running regularly. So it really does depend on, some people, if you have flat feet, for instance, or if you suffer from really bad plantar fasciitis, or if you really need the support, different people have different levels of need for the support. Everybody can benefit from supporting your feet anatomically, but if you're someone who really notices and experiences a lot of pain, if you don't have the level of support you need, then you're going to need to swap your footbeds out more regularly than somebody else.
Let me ask, do you have the materials that you use, are they fair trade?
Good question. I don't think that they are fair trade certified at the moment.
I'm just suggesting that be added into the agenda footprint of the company.
It's a valuable suggestion. It's something I'm sure it would have been considered. We are in the process of putting together an application for our B Corp certification. We really do, as a company, try and do everything in the most responsible way possible.
That's what I was hearing, and that's why I asked.
Thank you. It's something that I'll take forward. At the moment, no. One other thing that might interest you is that we are in the process of we haven't even spoken to the fact of so the footbeds come with, all of our products come with a label of their carbon impact. So the footbeds are labeled carbon negative because for every kilogram of cork produced, a cork oak tree absorbs on average 55 kilograms of CO2 from the atmosphere. So in order to get whatever quantity of cork, in order to make a product, 55 times the weight of that cork has been absorbed from the atmosphere in carbon dioxide. So we account for that when we do the calculations of the carbon impact of our products. And when you account for that, our footbeds, at least in particular, come out as being an entirely carbon negative product. But we label all of our products with their carbon impact because we believe strongly that people deserve and have the right to know the relative impacts of different products that they might choose between. And on top of that, in relation to your question about certification, one of the things that's high on our agenda is assessing the total organizational impact, carbon impact of our company, and offsetting the impact to a factor of 110% in order to become completely carbon negative. So we can say everything that we do as a company, we operate as a carbon negative company because we're keen to express and to also communicate to people that you don't just have to be our sort of catchphrases when it comes to carbon neutral is not enough. You don't have to stop at nullifying your impact. If you can nullify your impact, you can go a step further and actually make sure that your operations as a business have a positive impact. Take us one step towards dealing with the issues that we have as a planet, as a global society.
I love it. I do have a question. Like, I'm very curious when people are calibrating the carbon impact, how far down the pipeline do you go? Because, do you consider part of the carbon impact being the shipping and the materials that have been utilized and produced and the manufacture and the transportation? And like, how do you go about calculating from where in the pipeline do you start calculating carbon impact?
So we start from the cork growing on the tree to the carbon emissions of a product being thrown away in a landfill, which is the current state of affairs. But we take into account
complex.
It's very complex. And a lot of the data that we use is imperfect. I guess it's using data that is based on averages, but we do it through an accredited third-party company, and their sole job is what they do is provide life cycle analyses of different products. And so we consulted them, and they said, give us all of the information you can about what materials you're using, where things are being shipped from and to, where they're being stored. I was amazed by the process personally, the level of detail that they go into in terms of calculating the impact. Things like, how much space does a carton of footbeds take up on a shelf in a warehouse, and calculating the amount based on, so say our warehouse is in Salt Lake City, then they calculate the amount of power based on the power grid in Utah. How much does that amount of space in terms of being stored in this facility for an average of this amount of time, how much carbon is associated with that? And even further, they even calculated the impact of turning on your oven at home for 2 minutes at 200 degrees Fahrenheit to heat mold the footbeds, which was the thing
I think it would be a tremendous service and really fascinating to make that spreadsheet or that inventory available to your customers, like to have it on your website. And it could be amazing to have a video along with it to show the supply chain. One of the things we've been talking about trying to find is a really good supply chain movie to share with people, because people have no idea what is involved in how we receive our products. And I, for one, would love to see that progress report, it would be fascinating.
So we do have on our blog, if you go to yoursoul.com and click on the blog, which is in the...
Let me interrupt you for a second to say, sure. All these links are going to be available on our website too at sustainabilitynow.global. So, you'll be able to check there for these resources and for the discount URL as well. So please continue.
Yeah, sure. So on the blog, I've written a dedicated blog explaining exactly how we calculate the carbon negative status of our footbeds, showing in graph form, the relative impact of the carbon absorbed by cork oak forests, the impact of the different stages of the life cycle of the product thereafter, after manufacture. And we have linked off to the actual life cycle assessment documents that we were provided.
Awesome.
by the third party assessor. So that's also something that we are very keen to ensure, is that we are as transparent as we possibly can be around all of these things. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there. And it's very difficult. Exactly.
Yes.
So we're very keen to ensure that people have all of the information that they want when it comes to taking a look at what we're up to, that it's all there, it's all open for people to see. We're very proud of what we're doing as a company and the way that we're doing it. So we invite people, by all means, come and check it out. To your point about the supply chain issues and people not really knowing, one of the things that struck me the most is that the footwear industry alone accounts for 750 million metric tons of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere globally. I believe
over a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Annually, over a year, 750 million metric tons, which is the footwear and fashion industries combined make up for something like a fifth of all carbon impacts.
Wow.
So it's a massive proportion. But what is interesting to note is that in footwear in particular, one of the biggest or the biggest impact point is in material sourcing and processing. And that is really why it's part of the reason that footwear will be, to begin with, a big focus for ReCORK, is because there is such a huge impact, huge scope of impact to be made. Yeah.
Can you name the company that was doing the audit of the life cycle for you guys?
We worked with a company called Green Step.
Green Step. Okay. That's awesome.
Based out of Kelowna, BC.
Okay. Thank you for that. So what should I have asked you that I didn't ask you? Is there anything that we missed?
Sure. Yes, almost certainly, but nothing. If there's nothing that you would have asked me in particular, one thing I'd say a little bit more about Cork in general, which is that we encourage people to choose Cork whenever. If I didn't make it clear enough in the beginning, choosing not just recycled Cork, but Cork itself as a material is always the right choice. As I've said, for each, Cork is worth 55 times its own weight in CO2 removed from the atmosphere. So for instance, if you're choosing wine and you have the ability to choose natural cork over a screw cap, takes 24 times more CO2 emissions to produce than a natural cork going into your wine. So things like that, which people may not really consider, may not think of. Cork is we are not just in what we do and because of what we do, but in general, we are champions for Cork. At every opportunity we get, we like to encourage people to choose and use Cork as much as possible.
Thank you. Boy, I'm so glad I asked. That's awesome. Well, I just want to say, Paul, thank you so much for being with us. This has really been eye-opening on a whole lot of levels. And I want to thank you. I want to thank our producer, Scott Billy, who is my partner in crime here with Sustainability Now. And I also want to say a big thank you to all of you who are listening or watching and carrying the torch. That's it for today. Live your best life. Love the world around you, and together we can save the world.
Thank you for listening to Sustainability Now, solutions to shape a world that works. Visit sustainabilitynow.global for resources related to today's program. And be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us on social media.